Hello everybody and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today as I share a soul plan perspective and some insights into the term white privilege. So let's get started. This video does come with a trigger warning. I am going to be sharing some things which you may find uncomfortable, or they may stir up feelings that are uncomfortable, in which case you may wish to pause the video and just remember to close your eyes, take some deep breaths, to come from that space of the heart and to be open and receptive to this. And then when you're ready, you can come back and continue watching. So let's begin by looking at the term white privilege. As you can see, the foundations for this term are the 12-3. So we look at both of the energies. The 12 is the energy of love and knowledge. So in this aspect of the chart, it tells me that there is a lack of knowledge. And even though there may be a desire to learn, perhaps there is an imbalance. So the 12 is an energy connected to the star sign Libra. If you know Librans, then you know that it's all about finding and achieving balance. So this is definitely a quest for this, to find balance, and it is created and it stems from an imbalance. There's also an element with 12s of having a fear of failure, and sometimes they fear failure so much that they won't actually take any action, and they will just stay in this cycle of fearing getting it wrong, so not actually taking any action. So in a way, white privilege has been perpetuated, perhaps because white people have feared their ability to step forth and help create change. Maybe they haven't felt that they had the power, and yet here we go, the power has been with them all this time. Now we look at the 3, and this is the energy of expression. So the 3 is therefore a teaching energy. And that can mean that there's something here to be learnt, but it can also mean that you can use your white privilege to teach other people with white privilege how they can find balance and therefore come from a space of love and knowledge, using their white privilege for good. And the 3 also is the polarity of wealth to poverty. So in this case, it could be that the white privilege can bring a foundation of wealth, even if they have a lack of understanding or haven't learned why this wealth comes to them. A wealth of access to things and really taking it for granted. Or perhaps they're in the space of poverty, and that can be not just financially, but also in mindset and how you view your world and your life as lacking. Or it could be being in that space of poverty and perhaps thinking that you are powerless or don't have access to something, and actually it's about recognizing that with this privilege you really do. 3 is also about coming out of your shell. So there could be an element of burying your head in the sand and hiding away. Of course, when we're doing shadow work, it's very intense, it can be very uncomfortable, so it's quite natural to feel the need to turn away from it or hide or bury your head in the sand. And again, this is just saying, if you can recognize your wealth, recognize how much access and how you can use your white privilege for good, then you can really begin to tap into that love and that knowledge and educate yourself, and therefore come from a more balanced space. And it's also worth mentioning that with this polarity, it's connected to self-worth and valuing yourself. So there could be an element of perhaps because you don't value yourself and you may be experiencing self-worth issues, you're not valuing other people. And therefore you might be interrupting other people, which could be, in the space of white privilege, a form of tone policing, when you are perhaps interrupting and not allowing other people to express themselves, whether that be a fellow white person or a black person who needs to express their rage or their trauma in some way, shape or form. So ultimately the lesson with this is recognizing that you can utilize and use your white privilege for good. You have a wealth of resources, a wealth of access at your fingertips, and it's up to you to step into that space, educate yourself and lead from love. And that element of balance is going to be really important in that. So then we look at the abilities. These are the 11-2. So the 11 is the energy of structure, harmony and assimilation. So already we have the fact that white privilege's abilities lend themselves to the white supremacy and systematic racism. Essentially, systems are in place that people can benefit from if they have white privilege. This is a really intelligent energy, so it should be very logical and practical. And therefore, when you learn what you need to learn, when you educate yourself, you have the intelligence and the practical and logical know-how, the common sense needed to actually implement it and create change. And again, it's connected to harmony. It's connected to the planet Venus. So it is about creating harmonious relationships. So when you have worked through and come into that space of understanding how you can educate yourself and lead from love, then you can really help create change and create harmony. And the 11 is also the polarity of life to death. So I'm really getting a sense of a cycle here, ups and downs, and the death of white privilege as a negative thing, and hopefully eventually the death of white privilege completely, and hopefully the death of white supremacy and these systems of racism, and bringing new life of new systems and new ways of being and new ways of interacting with one another that comes completely from a space of unity, love, equality and equity. Then we have the 2, which is the energy of wisdom and support. So technically this could be a very supportive energy when aware, but of course if you're not aware, referring back to burying your head in the sand, then you may be unable to offer the support necessary. And again, this could be offering space to allow a Black person to completely express their rage, or it could be utilizing your white privilege to actually help create systemic changes and be supportive in that sense. And 2s are really good at holding space. They often make really great wise counselors, and they are empaths. So again, it might be worth mentioning there could be some emotional overwhelm as you're learning, as you're coming into that space of balance, and therefore there's a need for protection so that you can discern and then engage properly. And the 2 is another polarity of wisdom to folly. So making mistakes along the way is to be expected, but you have the resilience and the perspective needed to learn from these mistakes. So that's really important, recognizing that when you've come into that space of balance and when you're learning how you can use your access to resources and being able to step into your white privilege for the time being as something good before we dismantle it, then you are going to make a couple of mistakes along the way. So forgiveness is going to be important, and there will be some ups and downs, but hopefully you'll be able to really help birth this new cycle, this new way of being, and be really supportive and become wise along the way. Then at the top for the success, we have the 6-6. So I see this as potential success. So it can kind of go either way. If you don't overcome what I've mentioned, then this energy can actually become obsessed with power. So there could be a little bit of resistance with working through white privilege, because when you've had access to everything and your life has been supported by this system, is the word I want to use here, then it can be difficult to let that go. Or at least maybe there's just some subtle internal resistance where part of you feels like, well, what's going to happen to me if I dismantle white supremacy? What will happen to my privilege? Where will my power and all my wealth of access go? And it's just important to remember that it's not going to go, it's going to lessen to allow the rise for Black people, and I'm going to use BIPOC here, Black and Indigenous people of colour, to rise and have equal access to. It can also be about having tunneled vision and not noticing what's going on around you. And again, if you have white privilege, you may not see systematic racism as a problem because it's just so ingrained within you through society that it's natural that you should have this access as a white person. And again, it's about realizing that's not true and that's not the way things should be. So really about opening your eyes and seeing what's going on around you, like really seeing it for what it is and recognizing how you can really help. But this energy is also the energy of a visionary, and I get the sense of also a new thought leader. It's a very creative energy, and I take that to be creative solutions. And it's also fantastic for business. It's connected to Taurus, so it's definitely somebody who, when they feel passionately about something, they can really push in a balanced way. You know, it's not about being a bull in a china shop, and it's not about just really ambling along. It's about having consistency to what you're doing and helping to break through obstacles as well. But you know, that's another another aspect you can look at. It is a stubborn energy, it is connected to Taurus, and sometimes that can be a good thing. Sometimes being stubborn means that you're saying, actually, I'm really going to make sure that this systematic change happens. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And then obviously there's the other side, which is that element of resistance of, digging my heels in, I don't want things to change. For whatever reason. You know, you could perhaps argue that they're stuck in their ways. But the 6 is a fantastic manifester, and as I said, it is about creativity. So it's about having the spark of an idea and bringing it down and creating in physical form. So it's not just about talking about making change, it's about actually physically bringing down and physically manifesting and creating and implementing this change. So I hope that this video has been helpful to show you an energetic explanation of what white privilege is. It can stem from love and it can share knowledge. It does have a wealth of access to things. It is about starting a new cycle, breaking down old structures, creating new ones. It is about learning from your mistakes, and it is about busting through obstacles and creating change and physically manifesting change in the world. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in next week's video.